everyone. Before I get started, this is a completely different kind of video for me of what I'm going to be filming today. I feel like people who know me will kind of see me, you know, not take things seriously on whether it's like my close friends on Instagram or my private Snapchat story. Like, I'm always kind of like never serious, just joking around, having a laugh. This isn't going to be that kind of video. It's going to be as positive as I can make it because that's just who I am as a person. But in terms of the actual topic, it's not going to be like a funny one. So I apologise about that. But yeah, today what I'm actually going to be sitting and talking about is something I've been meaning to do for quite a while now. I'm really nervous to be talking about it. I don't know why. I feel like I've said this story so many times to numerous different amount of people, and yeah, to kind of like put it out there on the internet's just mad. But yeah, over a year ago now, I said I was going to be filming a video kind of just talking about losing my mum to cancer. And the reason why I want to put this out there is, you know, the statistic of cancer now is horrible. And I'm not saying this to just scare anyone. It's 1 in 2 people. Like, that's literally the difference between me and you watching this video. That figure's so close to home for me. And if I can just help anyone, like even if it's just one person, kind of just come to terms with, you know, this process that they're going through in their lives, then that, I feel like I've fulfilled my purpose of the reason why I've literally wanted to film this video for so long that I just haven't got around to doing yet. So yeah, I apologise with that. But yeah, I just want to help others by sharing my story. And you know, it's not even really my story, it's my mum's. Like, my mum's not here to share it, unfortunately enough. But yeah, I feel like my mission is to kind of just like let her legacy live on through me. I feel like she's provided me so much integrity and just like strength within me through her genes, like that this is the least I could do to honour her. So yeah, just to kind of like make a very long story short in the most simple amount of terms, I was 13 when my mum died. I'm fucking crying this early on. But yeah, I was 13, I'm 23 now. It's been 10 years. And I feel like I'm now in a position in my life where I can sit and I can talk about it and get upset. That's something I really want to stress to people. Like, it's okay to get upset about this. Like, it really fucking is. For the longest time ever, I could say the story of my mum's passing and everything without having a single tear like stream down my face, and it'd be the other people around me who'd be crying, and they'd be apologising for crying because I wasn't. Like, it's okay to cry about this. It's okay to feel sad, whether you're a female, male, non-binary, whatever your pronouns are. Like, it is okay to really put like those emotions into place when you're talking about something like this. So yeah, I was 13 when I lost my mum to cancer, and you know, I didn't really have the longest amount of time to process the little amount of time I had left with my mum. So, you know, I was 12 when I found out that my mum had cancer, and I don't think it matters what age you are. When you find out someone of that importance to you has cancer, it is the most scariest, heart-wrenching feeling like that you can ever go through. Well, for me it 100% was. And I remember my mum and dad coming to my bedroom. It was a few days before Christmas, really. I know I had a few days left of school, and you know, my mum come and sat me down and she's like, I've got something to tell you. And she said, oh, I might have cancer. And I remember I just cried, and she said, it's okay if I do have it, I'm going to be fighting it, and I'm going to be kicking its ass. Like, those are the words that she said to me. And that's the thing about my mum. Like, my mum had so much fucking hope. Like, she had so much hope and so much fight. And yeah, that was kind of like seeing her have just that strength from the get-go. I just thought everything was going to be okay. Like, I just thought, like, my mum's, no matter if she gets it, she's got this in the bag. That's what she told me. Like, why would she say otherwise? Like, you, at that age as well, when you're kind of going from like a child to a teenager, you're in a very sort of like, very like rebellious sort of starting stage of your life. And, you know, when you're a child, you see your parents as these superheroes. And throughout this entire process, like, she always was my superhero. Like, and I just looked at her and thought, bloody hell, like, she's really going through it. And how she just held herself through so many different occasions and situations through this time was just so amazing. So yeah, it wasn't until like the following month, like a few weeks after, her results come back, and obviously she was diagnosed with cancer. And I believe the cancer that she had, I can't remember the actual medical name of it, but I believe it was secondary liver cancer. So I believe it was something like with the bile duct. So obviously those, I believe they're connected. I'm not like a med student or anything like that. Yeah, so I think it was actually like secondary liver cancer. And, you know, straight away my mum was like, right, I'm going to go with chemotherapy. And there was so much hope from the beginning. Like, I never ever saw like my parents, either of them, like my dad, like, so much fucking like respect goes out to that man. Like, how he held himself throughout the entire situation for not just my mum, but for me and my sister as well. Like, he's a great man. And yeah, just, you know, there was just so much hope from the beginning. You know, she said she was going to go on chemotherapy, and it was actually after the first one, she come in and she said it didn't work. I'm gonna go on another one. And this whole period is within like the first like year. So I was 12, I was in year 7, and then I went into year 8 the following September. So this is like the whole like year period. So she had one chemotherapy, it didn't work. It's okay, the fight goes on. The second chemotherapy, again, it didn't work. The fight goes on. The third chemotherapy, again, it didn't work, but this time, from a young age, like, this is why it's so important to talk about this, because, you know, I know people who are going through a very similar situation to myself as what I went through, and it doesn't matter what age that you are. You know, I was 13 and I have my diary from that period. I still have it, and I feel like it'd be very good for me to make another video and maybe share like what my thought process was throughout this time. And I remember writing in my diary, so it was very shortly after my grandma Anne passed away, and my mum said to me that she wasn't going to go on a third chemotherapy. And I remember just sort of thinking, like, why would you not? Like, why? I literally thought chemotherapy was going to cure her. So I just thought, why is she not doing this treatment? Like, it just really put the question in my mind for the first time throughout the year and a few months of her having cancer, is my mum going to die? Because it was the first time I saw her lose what I thought was like her hope. And, you know, I remember there was a situation, me and my mum was in the bathroom together, and I thought, I've never actually asked her this, like, throughout the entire process of her going through this disease. And I just said to her, I was like, Mum, are you going to die? Thinking that she was going to be like, no, don't be silly, like, I told you I'm going to fight it, because that's what my mum said. She said she was going to fight it. And she just turned to me and said, well, we all go in the end. And I just said to her, oh, okay. And after that conversation, I went into my bedroom and I cried. so fucking much, like, because I fully expected her to just say, no, don't be silly. It just sounded to me like she gave up hope. And I remember writing in my diary that, like, my idea on death was so, like, I said I'm scared of death. And death's inevitable, like, you can't escape it. And I remember writing in my diary, I'm scared of death, but I think that's because I have the wrong idea of it. And, you know, it's so important, especially for those who are younger, who you might not think understands. Like, they do understand. They will be thinking all the same things that I probably felt at that age. And you just need to try and communicate with them that death isn't this horrible, scary thing. Like, it can be beautiful, it can be peaceful, and it's not always the end. And that's such a massive thing to put in place for people who may have the wrong perception of death. So, you know, fast forwarding a couple of months to the little time left that I had with my mum, I remember, you know, my mum was in hospital, and for me that was just the norm in my life. Like, throughout my entire childhood, from me being born, my mum has been in and out of hospital. She had Crohn's disease from the age of 16. She had a brain hemorrhage when I was 3 years of age. She really fucking went through it, that woman. Like, you know, all these traumatic things that happened to her, and the cancer was just another one. And I remember, you know, my granddad picked me up from my friend's house, and we were just chilling this evening watching TV. And my dad's come home that evening. It was about 9:05. On, I believe it was the 10th of February 2013. And, you know, my dad come in, and I said, where's mum? Just thinking like he was gonna just say, oh, she'll be home tomorrow, because that was always the case. And he sat down in front of me and my granddad, and he said, your mum's only got a few days to live. So obviously for me, I just couldn't wrap my head around this. I just didn't understand. I thought she was going to fight it. And I remember just like bursting into tears, all three of us, my dad, my granddad and me. We was all just hugging each other, and I then got like a sense of anger, and I just said, like, is there no way she's gonna live? And my dad just looked at me and he went, no, sweet. So I was like, right, okay. And I remember that night when my dad went and got my mum's stuff for the hospital and went back to go obviously like stay with her, and me and my granddad just laid in bed together that night and just hugged and just spoke about her. The next day, I went and visited my mum in the hospital. There was a few of us who went, and my little sister as well, who was 3 at the time. She's now 13. You know, we was there, and for her as well, my heart goes out to her so much. I remember just seeing my mum in the hospital bed, and I just cried. Like, I just cried as soon as I saw her. She's like, don't cry. And I just said, how do you expect me not to cry? Like, and I just got in the hospital bed with her, and I was just hugging her. And I just said, Mum, I promise I'm going to make you proud. And she just went, I know you will. And that they were like really the last words that I remember coming from my mum's mouth, was just, I know you will. And don't forget how much I love you. The following day, my mum had been moved into a hospice, St Catherine's Hospice in Preston, because that's where I was living at the time. And I remember, you know, we went, my family from Dover come up, my dad's side, my dad and my granddad, you know, all of us who could have been there was there. And this day was one of the worst days of my life. And, you know, my mum, she wasn't like the day before where she was able to speak to me. She was that drugged up on like morphine. She just laid there and you couldn't get a word out of her. She just wasn't the same. Her personality gone. She couldn't talk, nothing. And I remember I just sat next to her and I just held her hand. And we all kind of got our chairs and we sat around. And I remember I looked at my dad and I was like, is she going to die today? And my dad just went, yeah. And I just couldn't believe it. Like, even on that last day, I still had hope that she was going to live and that they just got it wrong. And, you know, I just, I swear me and my mum had some weird, like, telepathic connection. And I said, I was like, it was like she told me, oh, I've got tissue on my lip. It was like she told me to like say it. I was like, put some Take That on for her. They were her ultimate like favourite band. She loved Take That. And we put Take That on and she still didn't go, and my dad literally leant over to her and he's like, it's okay, you can go now. Everyone's here. And she just wasn't going. And there was a time I thought she'd gone. And I was just holding her hand. And then it was like, it's so weird. It was like my mum told me to say this. It was like she was like telepathically saying put Never Forget on. That was her favourite Take That song on. Whenever it come on, she'd always sing and do the to it. And yeah, we put Never Forget on and she died 5 seconds into it. It was like she was waiting for that song just to come on. And then my auntie was like, she's gone. And we all just started just crying and hugging her and hugging each other. And you know what? It's so weird to say, but the only way I can describe it is that I just felt this like lift. And a lift just come off my shoulders. And I just stood up and I moved to the corner of the room and I just watched everyone just hug her and say goodbye after I had obviously done it myself. And I don't know why, I just had this like lift off me. And obviously I was sad, like there was no other word, like I can't even describe it in words, the amount of sadness I was feeling, but I just felt like such a heaviness had been taken off me. And I think that's what it comes down to is, you know, watching a parent is like, especially your mum, who's, you know, for me, your parents are supposed to be the ones who you can run to. I just felt like in that like final like moment I spent with my mum, it was me who was probably like holding her up, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think she would have lasted as long as what she did if we all didn't have that hope. And that's what it comes down to. It just comes down to hope. And, you know, the funny thing is, so I didn't realise that this entire time my mum was fighting cancer. It was terminal. I had no idea. That was kept from me, which, you know, looking back, do I wish that I'd known that my mum was going to die? It's hard to say. Like, you literally don't know how you'd handle it, like whether you know they're going to die or whether you don't. Personally, for me, I'm happy I didn't know, because, you know, my mum wanted me to live like a normal like childhood and be a normal teenager without having to worry, is my mum going to die like every day? So, you know, that was just like what my mum was like. She was so selfless and she always put me and my sister first in everything that she did. And that's the thing, I feel like it's so just important to remember, like, even though they're the ones fighting it, the impact of like of how you feel, like the impact it has on you after they leave, just leaves such a scar. Like, it's 10 years later, and like now I can fully speak about it, and I can cry, and I can really feel the emotions all over again. And you know, when I put the post out a year ago, I asked people to ask me questions so I could kind of answer them at the end of the video. And you know, I feel like I will definitely do a separate video on grief. I actually studied neuroscience at university. I graduated with a 2:1, so you know, I learned a lot about grief. I also learned about like the quality of life within cancer patients. I'd done that for my dissertation. So that's something I'd also really love to like film, so I 100% will be doing that for people who are interested. But some of the questions that I actually got is, how did I get through it? And that was something I was asked at the time. And honestly, if you want me to be 110% honest, which I will be throughout this like very sensitive topic, is you don't really get through it. Like, you get dragged through it, if anything. And that's the whole thing. Like, for me, like I say, my situation was very different. I didn't realise my mum's cancer was terminal. I didn't realise how little she had left on this earth. But obviously having that event of watching my own mum die and still having that hope, and then that hope just being like ripped from me in an awful way at the end, obviously when she passed away, it's just, you just learn to live with it. It's honestly all about like your perception. And I think a massive thing of what helps people get over this stuff is like faith as well. Like, for me, I'm not too sure about obviously you guys watching this video, but I believe in, like, a massive believer in spirituality. Religion, I'm a little bit like, you know, I dip my toe in and out of it sometimes, and I believe that there is a heaven, and I do believe that there is, whether it's not heaven, there's somewhere after that we will go, and like our souls will connect again. And I know for a fact I will see my mum again, and that my mum's always with me. She gives me signs. Like, there's just some things that are like unexplainable things that have happened that I won't go into detail, but you know, she visits me in my dreams, I know for a fact, and gives me like little signs here and there. And it's just that kind of like remembering I will see her again. And through all the down times that I go in this life, it's my mum who's the one who's holding me up. And it's just having that faith and that kind of belief that you will see them, and that they're still there, even though you can't see them and you really fucking wish that you could. And just also like knowing, like, just trusting yourself that you knew the person well enough to know what they would say in those times. But you know, if you just take a moment to kind of just sit by yourself or lay in bed, and if you're going through a situation, just lay there and just speak to them still. Just speak to them. Like, just because they're gone doesn't mean you can't speak to them. Like, that's really what has helped me kind of get through it over the past 10 years. And you know, if I had say I've got through it, like, that's what it would be, because people see me as such a positive person, I've been told, and very bubbly and outgoing. How am I like that after a lot of the shit that's happened to me in my life? And it's just about perception and just having a positive attitude towards everything. Like, that really gets you a long way, 100%. So just try and be as positive as you can be. And if you're not a positive person, then there's so many help books, there's so many podcasts, there's so many things that you can listen to. For example, I'm a massive fan of Ed Milet and also Jay Shetty. Like, I listen to them like religiously, and they've definitely helped me channel my mindset and kind of think a lot more of a positive way. Good Life and Good Vibes is a book by Vex King as well. His book really like changed the way of how I view the world and also myself. Another one was, how do you keep your mind busy when you're going through, like, obviously knowing about the diagnosis. And for me, you just have to live your life. Like, you can't put your life at a halt because someone else's life is kind of going through it. You still have to live life for you. And if it gets to the point where they eventually pass away, then, and you kind of feel like giving up, which I've felt like before, and I'm not in that place now, luckily, but if you can't live life for you, live life for them. Because at the end of the day, like, as detrimental it is on your mental health and your emotions to be going through like a parent or someone you know with like a terminal illness or a dreadful disease, like, it is them who's going through it, like, and that's something you really need to remember. Like, it's them who's going through the treatment, it's them who's going through all the hospital appointments and hearing the good or negative news. You have to be strong for them sometimes, like, you just do, like, but it's also really taking that time out for yourself to deal with those emotions also. For example, you know, like, there's someone I know who's going through it at the moment, sorry, and I remember I just said to them, I was like, you just need to be able to feel what you're going through. And like, even though like obviously it's one of their like people closest to them who's like going through the actual disease, like, you still have to go through things for you also. Like, you still have to have yourself in mind. And that's what I mean. It's like, I'm not saying like don't cry because, you know, they're going through the illness, but also remember that you have to like try and come to terms with things in your own head so you can be strong for them, so you can be strong enough to even speak to them about it. At the end of the day, like, I feel like it's such a taboo topic to speak about, and I feel like if I asked my mum a lot more questions and, you know, just a lot more things of how was the hospital and like, what did they say, and kind of just come to like terms with the terminology and like the nature of what was happening, then, you know, maybe I would have got myself into a little bit of a rut within like my later years, like my later teens and like my early 20s. I was in a really bad place with it. I held a lot of resentment, but again, that's also the stages of grief which you go through, and I'll also make another video on that at one point as well. And my only advice is just to talk to people. You know, counselling is all good, but as well, like, for someone who's done neuroscience, I also think counselling can be textbook shite. It all depends on the counsellor, it all depends on the person you're speaking with. Like, I've gone through counselling myself, and for me personally, the only thing it actually helped me do is know what grief is. They didn't tell me how to get over it, but maybe that's the nature of counselling. Like, you get over things in your own time. And I think for me, the most important thing is just finding someone who cares enough about you and you care enough about them to be able to actually sit and talk and have that like 100% like open conversation about what it is that you're feeling and that you're going through. Because once you get that release, like, you feel so much better. Like, even just me talking now from like the beginning of the video, I feel so much more just strong in the words I'm saying. I'm not like messing my words up like I was, but I just feel like just talking to people, it helps. Just ask more questions and just remember to feel, and yeah, and just be strong. You know, it's sometimes, I'm not saying, when people say like strong, I feel like they think, oh yeah, you have to like not cry or not show emotion. The strong people are the ones that get up and can admit to themselves if they're having a rough time, if they can lay in their bed and just cry to themselves and let out that emotion. That's being a strong person, like really coming to terms with how you feel. So it's just remembering that. And yeah, for anyone that is like going through this situation and this really like difficult time, just, my DMs are always open. Like, I'm always up for a phone call, video chat, anything like that, or a DM. Like, anyone can speak to me about this. I feel like it's been 10 years and I'm, you know, sharing my story to just help the lives of others who are going through something very similar. I will be doing more videos as well, 100%, to help other people. So that is just like what I want to do, and I feel like if I can just get that message across to help someone else today or tomorrow, then my purpose is like fulfilled on this earth. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and more importantly listening. I know the quality of the video is probably a bit shit. I am filming on my phone, I'm also looking at myself rather than the camera, but yeah, it does get better, and it's just trusting the process and yeah, any questions, do not be afraid to ask me for any help.